Welcome to the Wordy Woman podcast. I am Anna, joined by my co-host Harriet. Today we're excited to have Kayla Blomquist with us. Kayla's journey has taken her from being an athlete in Wisconsin to serving as a US diplomat in China, and now she's shaping the conversation on AI governance and the US-China relations at the University of Oxford. In this episode, we'll dive into her fascinating career path, explore what it means to be a woman in the fast-evolving AI scene, and get her advice for those looking to break into the field. So let's go! Let's zhuzh it out, shall we?
So, do you have any advice for women that are interested in working in the AI space?
Definitely. I think absolutely educate yourself on many different developments, the key labs, how the technology works, and the politics around it. But do not ever, especially if you're coming from a non-technical background, do not let the lack of that technical background prevent you from pursuing this as a career or prevent you from thinking that you have value to add to the space, because that is, I see a tactic, consciously or unconsciously, of a lot of players in the space that often happen to be men. It's not necessarily that they're it is correct to say having a technical background means that you understand how the technology works and where it's going potentially better, but that doesn't mean that they understand the social implications of it or the impact that will have on society or how to regulate it. These are very different skill sets, and I think a lot of the time, especially since the numbers in STEM education is so imbalanced gender-wise, that is something that makes a lot of women think that they can't go into this direction, whether that is in a technical role, in a corporate role, or policy role. Different perspectives and backgrounds have so much to add, because it's such a fluid and shapeless type of technology, and we need the social scientists, we need political scientists, we need psychologists to be thinking about this. And so if it is an area that interests you, do not let anyone tell you that your skill set is not valuable. And I think that is something that we see very disproportionately with women.
Do you think that people are gatekeeping by sort of saying if you can't program your own LLM or something, that you're not your opinion is not valid on it?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Do you think that comes from the fact that it's sort of stemmed from quite like a hard science, and so people feel protective over it? Where do you think that kind of I don't know if snobbery is a word, but where that gatekeeping comes from? Because it's interesting that you say that we do need these other sorts of people with all sorts of backgrounds being involved in the space. Where do you think that kind of pushback is coming from?
I think there are definitely forms of ego that drive it. There are also forms of very, very valid points of how do you regulate a technology that you don't understand. That is a very valid criticism. That's one of the reasons I chose to go to the OII. I wanted to learn how the internet worked, how these technologies worked. In the end, that often requires a lot of self-study. So I think that form of the points is very valid, but it's also when people say that and they are coming from that long-term background in STEM, it is a self-serving, whether they mean it in that way or not, a self-serving kind of gatekeeping exactly position to take. And especially if AI as a technology broadly is going to be so big in society as a lot of them tend to think, and I tend to agree, it is not just the technical development of it that we need to pay attention to.
I was going to ask on how big and all pervasive AI is going to be, because I think even now most people I know use ChatGPT on the daily. Do you think there's a risk of too many people trying to get into AI, through different disciplines, or just adding that term AI into their research paper to kind of fit into that trend? Do you think there's a risk of oversaturating the field so that people who are looking to outsource experts or specialists, they would just get confused because there are too many people who claim to know what AI does and how it works?
I think that's absolutely an issue, and I think that there's definitely going to be a bubble in a sense. If we're thinking, especially in terms of investments, comparing it to the .com bubble, there will always I think a driving force behind that is when something is hot or like the next big thing, people will naturally flock to it and try to seek opportunity through that. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but when there's not the quality to back those ideas for products or the functioning of a company or certain takes on policy and regulation up, then it absolutely kind of needs to have a popping of the bubble in a sense.
Yeah.
And I do think that there will be like a point that we hit where the hype bubble bursts and it will not be fashionable anymore. And it'll be interesting to see who sticks around in the field after that. I think I will definitely still be here. I like to think I was working on this.
Like, you were, before it was cool, like back in 2018, you were already on this. So
yes, in a sense that I tend to avoid taking like specific predictions of, by X year we're gonna have AGI or something. But I do think that as a set of concepts and set of systems, it's going to increasingly form really important parts of like infrastructure of society. And so if we compare it to the internet, sure, there was a dot-com bubble, sure, there was a lot of hype and investment in the early days, and that did clear out, but the internet is still the backbone of society.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's still, since then there have been profitable companies, since then there has been so much important social science research, thinking about its implications. My whole department exists for studying that.
It's like a whole new industrial revolution. As sort of a woman in this space, in general, what would you say has been like the most interesting part of like the intersection of your gender and working in the space, if there is anything that you would say is particularly apparent to you because of your gender?
There's so much, I don't know where to start. But so I think that I spend a lot of time thinking about power dynamics, specifically in the international stage between the two biggest countries in the world, and how there's this concept that is also highly debated in the US-China space of the Thucydides trap, where this like rising power and how conflict is very likely amidst that like power transition, should it be happening. And so that's the sense in which I professionally think about power, and I think about it in terms of what new forms of power will be created through AI, or how it will be exercised differently by governments, between governments, etc. But I think being a woman and being in a different place in societal power dynamics, or interpersonal relationship dynamics, it's a different perspective from like the bulk of people who are acting within this field. And so it is something that being in this different position and set of power dynamics kind of in everyday spaces allows me to be a bit more reflective, and I think have an outside take on how power dynamics of other forms will play out.
You've seen it before. You're more sensitive to it because this is something that you've lived in. So you can draw parallels more easily.
Yeah. Why is it so important that we have more women joining the field of AI policy development, governance, and beyond? I think looking back to how I was talking about, my breakthrough of, I'm not stupid, is this institution just doesn't most highly value the types of intelligence that I have relatively more of compared to my lack of statistics passion. And I think when we think about who has created these infrastructures, and I think a lot about bureaucracy and organizations as a form of technology itself in a super abstract way. So if we take that, and that allows us to create a parallel with thinking about the broader world of AI, that world and the new kind of structure of it is being built, whether that is whether that's ChatGPT and how it is made up and how it's trained, or how we integrate AI systems throughout governments and our lives. Like, that infrastructure is being built as we speak, and when the people building it are not diverse in a number of ways, including gender, it will be tailored, and maybe unintentionally, if everyone has like the best of intentions, even then it will be built in a very specific way that serves their conception of how the world should be and is. And so I so desperately want more women in the space right now adding their thoughts in a much less restrained way, so that we can build this new infrastructure of society in its many forms in a way that also accounts for the way that we see and experience the world and want to exist in it.
Do you see that around you? Do you think Oxford does a good job in allowing...
Sorry, we're started laughing, gone.
Just, do you think when you enter these rooms,
Yeah.
do you see a lot of other women, or is it still predominantly a male stronghold?
Here, it depends on the room. I think we have so many talented women here.
Depends on the
Depends on the room.
Wow.
So there
And-
are different like little bubbles
Yes.
of places where you think that there's a more sort of even representation.
Yes.
And
And
how do you find these rooms? This is
you
interesting. Like,
make
how do you
them.
navigate these spaces? You make them
You
down.
make them.
It's a good answer. Sorry, I was talking over that. Wait, how do you find these spaces?
You make them.
Yay! Okay, that's a brilliant ending. I like that.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
God.
Well, there we have it, folks. Thank you so much for joining us for this very timely conversation with Kayla. If you enjoyed this interview, please consider supporting our work by subscribing to our YouTube and Spotify channels, as well as our social media accounts on Instagram and TikTok. Until next time, with love, we are your very own wordy, worthy, audacious woman, Harriet, Maria, and myself, Anna. Bye!
Standing like that. Moving stance. Handing stance over.